Hello everybody and welcome back. Today's video is kind of an out-of-the-line video and it's about something that I've been needing for a long time, and it's a new computer. So I got a lot of boxes here, so this is basically going to be the unboxing and explaining everything video. But I thought, well, the AMD 3000 series is out and they're making quite a splash, so let's get one and build a new small form factor PC. And somebody said, well, why don't you turn the camera on, and that's what I'm doing now. So let's dig into things. Let's see. Ooh, we got coupons. Aktion. 10 euros for you if you play the lottery. Nah, rather spend my money on hardware. What is this? It's like, well, it's a coupon book. I don't need that either. Hello Fresh, something about cooking? Nope. And vinos, alcohol, wine. Nope. I'm not that much into alcoholic drinks. Packing material. And let's dig right into it. I chose a Ryzen 5 3600X, and that is exactly what is inside here. So I did choose the 3600X for a reason. I know that it's about 50 bucks more expensive than the 3600, which is almost exactly as fast as this one is. But I suppose maybe the binning of AMD makes this a slightly more lenient CPU that uses just this a little bit less energy. There were some really good reviews, and in those reviews you could see that an overclocked Ryzen 3600 would perform as good as a 3600X, but it would use about 8 to 10 watts more power, and honestly I can do without that. So here we have the Ryzen. Then we've got a set of what is this? Viper Steel memory. Did I order that? Patriot memory, yes. Yeah. So this is Patriot Viper Gaming, 16 gigabytes, a kit of 2, and it's 3733 megahertz. It was on offer, so I'm not quite sure that this is the best. It was rated to be CL17 memory, so I hope that was correct. And so that's the memory. And the main board, and this is one of the things that I really did look out for. The main board is the Gigabyte Aorus X570 Pro Wi-Fi in the ITX form factor. So this is going to be really small, because we're going to put the whole assembly, or I'm planning to, in the smallest form factor case that I could find that still has room for a 10-inch graphics card, and that is the SilverStone Sugo, which supposedly is supposed to be in this box. And this is a case that I've used a couple of times before, and I've grown to loathe it, and at the same time I've grown to like it. First of all, because it is so small, but also because it is really super effective in cooling, and it is really easy to build really good rigs that don't only run cool, but that are also really, really small. So this is basically the smallest Sugo that you can get, but it still fits a 10.5-inch graphics card in here, and if you do it right, you can actually separate out this area, so you have the whole intake on this side only for the graphics card, and it will push its heat into the case, getting cool air from the outside, and it will then expel everything out the back. And that is, if it works out, it is really, really great. If it doesn't, it's not. So that's the case. It's kind of like a hamster box. It's really so small. So those are the components that we're going to use. I do have other stuff on order. For a start, I'm going to try and use the Arctic Freezer 11LP and make an adapter for the CPU, because this doesn't come with an AM4 mount, I believe, but it is a pretty good low profile cooler. It's rated for 100 watts, which would make it a good target for the Ryzen 5 3600X, which is, I think, rated at 95 watts, 65 watts, something about that. But if we can make it fit, this should work out really well. But I've had problems with the extended width of the cooler before, but we're just going to make that fit. Also, it is really, really silent, so if we can get all the fans running at lowest speed, this thing should be silent while it's not under load, which is something that I'm really looking for. So those are the components: memory, CPU, case, mainboard. Also, I've got a power supply on order. For the time being, I'm going to use this one. This is a Texolo TPS400. I do not recommend these, just to make it really plain. I am waiting for a Chieftec, I think it's called SF350bs. They're silver rated and they are really, really silent, but they're kind of hard to get a hold of right at this time, it appears, because it's gone. It's been on sale on Amazon, and it's not been on sale, and now it's on back order, and I don't know when mine is going to arrive, but I can build one out of another PC because I've got more of these. So that's it for the parts, and I think next we'll take a look at the motherboard, because that is the most interesting thing of them all. Ooh. Ooh. This looks different than on the pictures on the website. I hope you can see this. Well, first of all, it is almost entirely black. I like that. It's pretty tidy. There's not a lot going on here. It does have a small fan. I hope that that is not the siren type of fan that I know from most of my 3D printers. Well, here's hoping. CPU socket. Apparently, what is that? 7 phases. Power supply. 1 mount for a 2280 NVMe. And the NVMe screw is included, which is really nice. And according to the documentation, it features 2 NVMe mounts. Can you see it? Where's the second one? I can't. I can only see one. USB. Well, that's a surprise. Well, one went missing. Right. So, this is an X570 chipset, so it does have newest spec for PCI Express and everything else. It does consume more power than all the others before, but it should be a pretty good pick. Also, of course, this will also work with the 12 and 16 core CPUs, so if I ever feel that I need to upgrade this system, I can still do that. So it's kind of a ongoing thing. I try to keep systems that I build or buy in a state so I can always upgrade them some more if I should need. Same goes for the memory. I think this one supports at least 32 gigabyte DIMMs, which would put it at 64 gigabytes, which should be enough. I don't think the Arduino IDE needs that much memory, but it seems to pull down a lot of the new CPUs now and then if you do some teensy work. So yeah, that is the really nice small mainboard. And apparently it does have some sort of LED light effects. We'll see when we... Oh yeah, there are LEDs up here in the front. I hope that you can turn them off because I don't really need that stuff. It needs to be silent and it doesn't need to put out any light effects. Right, what else is in the box? We do have a... we've got a Wi-Fi fin. We have some RGB sync cables for external lighting, and we've got a serial ATA cable, and that's about it. Apparently this mainboard also has newest spec Bluetooth and a very capable Wi-Fi, and I'm really looking forward to that because I've been having problems with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi with other systems that were sitting inside these SilverStone cases because they're so small and they are really they're radio tight. Nothing gets out. Okay. Now, about these memory modules, I kind of bought them because they were on sale. I didn't choose them because they were of a particular flavor, apart from being 3733 megahertz modules, and I think they'll do good. Really think so. If not, well, I learned a lesson. Same goes for the Ryzen, and oh yeah, I wanted to see the Ryzen 3600X. What fan does it come with? Is it the new Stealth or is it the Spire? And as you can easily see, it's the old fan, which might be a bit too large for this case. So it was a good choice to get this one, because this is actually going to be quite a bit smaller. I think we can see that. But I hear that the cooler and the fan itself are really good. They perform they can take care of a lot of heat from the CPU, but they do tend to be kind of loud. A few people that got these CPUs in recent days complained about them being not as silent as they used to be. I don't know about that. So yeah, that is it for the parts that I've got right now. And I'm going to, well, have a look at what I can prepare and what I can get fixed up, and I'll bring you back on board when I'm starting to mount stuff inside of here, because I have to take it all apart, and that is probably pretty uninteresting. But I'll get you back on board when things pick up again. Alright, it's the next day already, and you can see a few things have happened. First of all, the SSD, the NVMe, better yet, arrived, and I'm using a Corsair MP510. No reason why, it was just cheap. And it has the right spec. You can also see that I've started manufacturing a mount to adapt the AM4 mount for AMD to the 1155-56 series, because the Freezer 11LP just wants that. And these things here are 3D printed, and I think they're pretty cool. They do fit really nice. I did find out where the second M.2 slot is. It's right here below the fan and the heatsink, and you have to basically remove the fan assembly, and then you can stick the M.2 right below that, which means it's actively cooled, which is really nice. And if you have two, you have to place the second one under the main board, which is not optimal, because if that one breaks, you'll have to tear everything apart. But apart from that, this is what I did today, and I'm now going to try and mount the CPU and the cooler. I haven't measured if the height of the screws is correct yet. This is just a first try. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but I'm not too I'm not expecting it to work. If it does, well, it's great. If it doesn't, I'll make another one which either has the screws further up or further down. I suppose they need to go further up, because I believe that a AMD CPU when it's mounted is slightly further away from the main board than an Intel one is, but of course I could be wrong. And I'm going to try and do that, and when I do have that, I'll be back and we can continue the build. But this part is pretty nice. It fits really great. I did have to make room for 2 capacitors right under here, but that was really easy to do because I could just use a hot screwdriver to push away some of the material. This is PLA plastic. I don't think that it's going to get hotter than, I don't know, maybe 85 degrees when this would start deforming. I think this will work out nicely. So here we go. The deed has been done. And take a look at that. Ain't that a beautiful fit? This is just incredible. This is this was perfect. I didn't have to do anything to the screws. I didn't have to print anything again. It was just a matter of getting the nuts to grab the screws, give it a little bit of tension, and this thing just sat down. I had to give 2 foils of the cooler a slight bend outwards so it clears the plastic, but I could have made another piece of plastic if it had been needed. But this thing just fits beautifully, and the way that the fins of the cooler are now, I still have enough residual cooling to cool down the power supplies and all the coils there. This is just really, really great. And I can easily get the cooler off to put the M.2 under here. In fact, let's just do that now. So the manual says remove the fan. I wonder if there's any heatsink compound under that, or this is just a press fit. Anyway, it would probably be a good idea to just take this fan and give this either some heatsink compound, or if I have a fan that does have a lot of throughput here, I can just put a larger heatsink on top of this and just make this passive. But this is a pretty big chunk of aluminium. So yeah, nice material. And here we go. And there we have our M.2 disk. We can just grab this out of here. What I like about this case is that all the screws for the M.2 discs are there. I've had others where these screws were missing, and they're so hard to find because they're just a very strange size of screw. Now we can just fold this in here. And not lose the screw. And there we go. M.2 disk mounted. Do I have some proper heat conducting compound for this? I'll have to go look for something. Well, I did find some leftover Shin Etsoi micro SE, and I'll just put a few drops of that right on here. This stuff is way past its best use date, but it becomes really dry after a while, and you can either add some compound to get it to be more compliant again, or I like to use it for these jobs because once it gets hot, it will go a little bit softer than it is right now, and it still gets into all the pores. so it still works quite well without making a lot of mess. And this stuff was really expensive when it was new, but now that it's past its best, it can still be put to pretty good use. I'm just going to put a few dabs of that on here. I really hope that this fan isn't a siren. I really do. Haven't used the board yet. So let's use the screws as the index. Mount this back on here. There we go. And one, two, oh yeah, you can really feel this sinking in. It's going to be a good thermal connection. There we go, and it's done. Now I'm gonna go and grab an old video card. I haven't decided on what goes in here yet, but I don't know yet. And let's fire it up and see if it's any good, if it works, and if it's loud or not. There we go. So that's it put together. I found an old, I think it's a 1050. It's also a Gigabyte, so fits perfectly. And I hooked it up to power, and I made sure that everything was okay. And I've already powered it up, so I know it's working. It's not gonna spew out smoke. Well, that would be a show. And I know this is not the proper tool to turn it on, but I suppose it'll work. And yeah, that's it. It is almost silent. The loudest thing is the power supply that I'm not going to use anyway, but this is very, very nice. Trying it out, I've let it sit for about 10 minutes, and without any change, the CPU temperature leveled at 40, the chipset temperature also leveled at 40 degrees Celsius. The little fan down here is very silent. It is not absolutely silent, but it is very well that it doesn't really disturb anybody. And I suppose the PC will be very nice for working on. Yeah, the airflow around the CPU is very good because you can vent everything to the side, and later on when we put it into the small enclosure, that's the way that we want it, because we have a fan at the front that will push air in from the front and out the sides, and the power supply, even when the power supply is not really using its fans. And the graphics card is going to have its own window and its own side window to get air from, and it will push it to the inside where it can get expelled with all the other air coming from the front fan. I've already done this a couple of times, and I know it works really well, and it makes for really silent, really small PCs. And so I'm pretty happy with this. So it's almost not audible except for the power supply, but I don't care about that because it's not going to go into the final build. And everything works. The CPU cooler fits the mount. The 3D printed parts look really great. And that's it. But I can start putting it in the case. Right up till now, I spent about, I don't know, 2.5 hours getting everything hooked up, making the 3D printed parts. It's been a lot shorter for you, but I suppose that's the right way. Okay, now this is it. let's continue. Before I put this thing into the case, I'll just show it to you once over, just for size comparison. This here is the small Gigabyte 1050. It's pretty old, but very nice. You can see the sizes. It's an ITX, all right, and everything fits really well. I should have printed this in black, but I think it's special so it can shine. And this is a really nice build. I really like it. Here we go. Let's get to work on this little case. As I said, I've used these a number of times before, and these cases are really old and they have quite a history, because they came out as some of the first micro-sized cases, and they've just been improving on them on and on. They went from standard USB to USB 2.0. They didn't really change a lot of things. The media tray in the front here hasn't changed at all. You do have the possibility to put a drive in here. One of the other ones that I have has got a Blu-ray drive up in the front of here. And yeah, it's just a very nice case. It's simple and it's cheap. It's really, really cheap. There she goes. But it's also really easy to set up. It does come with an air filter in front of the fan, which is a very nice feature. And there's a second drive tray right down here. It's a drive tray for 3.5-inch drives, which kind of shows how old this thing is. The other nice thing about this is you can take it completely to pieces. And therefore it's very easy to get this thing set up. They did do a few moderate changes up in the front here that make it easier to get a slightly larger graphics card in there. For example, the 570 and 580s, although you could get them in here when there's a mainboard mounted, you would have to remove the fan out in front. The fan is nothing special. It does generate a fair amount of pressure and it is really, really silent. So I've used other fans in here, but most of the time I just keep these. There is one problem with this case that I've had a number of times, is that it is really hard to get to the release lever of the graphics cards. I haven't figured out a good way to do this, but well, maybe this one's better. Maybe they changed something, but I don't think so. So here we go. This looks nice. It fits really nice in there. There's a lot of room, a lot of extra space where you can put important other stuff, cables, mounts, what have you. You can just get all of that in there. It also comes with a fair amount of screws. There are more than you actually need, but in this case that really makes sense. Let's get some screws out of here. It also comes with the screws that you need for a slimline drive, which is a nice feature because those screws are normally not included with the drives themselves. And let's fasten this. Oopsie. Here we go. One thing that I will have to do is I'm going to have to paint the power supply that I put in here in matte black. Yeah, that will definitely need to be done. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do about the lighting in here. If I'm going to disable it or just put some black tape over it. Don't know yet. So this is not the final graphics card. I will just use this for installation purposes, and after that it's going to be replaced with whatever I deem fit. So where is the case fan connector? It's right up in the front here. Here we go, that's connected. And let's put some feet on here. That's kind of a nice feature that they don't actually mount the feet but put them in there, because sometimes if you stack your PCs, you do not want to have the feet all on the inside, or you want to be able to place them where the case that you're putting it on is the most solid. So it's nice that they're not on, and it's nice that they're not part of the case itself, because you would have to have holes in there, because maybe you don't want any feet, so you don't have to remove them. You just don't put any on there. There we go. One thing worth noting is that if you have the media tray up in the front here, you kind of lose the ability to use a long SFX power supply. So an SFX-L power supply will not really fit in here. If you leave the media tray out, you can use an SFX-L, but then you will have to put your disk drives somewhere else. Either get a mount for the inside, or get something where you can just stick them in, or use an M.2. But if you want to use a big power supply, you have to make room for that. The power supply that I ordered, and that still is on back order, is going to be a standard size SFX. I finished up the job of getting everything wired up in here, and it still looks fairly clean. A thing that I noticed was that the USB 3 connector to the front panel is a bit long. It could be slightly shorter, but yeah, it's right on the edge. Everything else is really simple with this case. It's fun to work with, and the front fan is hooked up. I'm using the makeshift power supply, but that is going to do a good job until I get the one that I want. With the only thing being that the one that I'm going to get is not going to be black, and I really like the way it looks in back here. So there's always paint. Last thing to do is close it up and get the front and top tray back on. I'm not going to put any hard drives in right now, because I want to try it out first. I'm going to get it installed. So yeah, this is what it looks like from the front, from the back. So let's close it all up. Make sure that everything is nice and snug. Feels good. Two more screws to go. One more screw. And we're done. Whoops. mini PC project accomplished. Nice, sweet, and above all, really quiet. If I turn it on, comes on right away. The loudest part in here is the power supply, and that will get replaced. This is the finished build. As you can see, it's really small. It works quite well. I did some benchmark and burn-in testing. The CPU runs really hot, but I read that this is not uncommon for the 3600X because I'm getting hot values that are very close to hot values that other people with the stock cooler have been getting. So running idle with Windows 10, I get between 55 and 60 degrees, which is due to the small case and the limited amount of air that I can push through it, because I want it to be quite silent. And after about 15 minutes of stressing it with CPU-Z, I get about 95 degrees, which is really high. But then again, other people have been seeing the same temperature, and it is the die temperature. So measuring at the heatsink with a infrared heat sensor, I can see about 65 to 70 degrees. So all might be well, barring the next firmware updates. Maybe this will improve. But it is really nice. So the parts that I've been using were the Ryzen 5 3600X, the Aorus X570 Pro Wi-Fi ITX mainboard, and the Patriot memory Viper Gaming. Yeah, none of that really disappointed me. Everything works really fine. I'm really happy with it. The only letdown was the Arctic Freezer 11 LP, which turns out is a updated version, which has been slightly cost reduced. So this thing is a lot louder than the old ones were. The motor is smaller, and in my case, I even had a problem that the copper part that is sitting on the CPU wasn't completely flat, and the thermal compound that is on it is so thick and just so hard, and mine had just gone bad. So I replaced it, I reseated it, I got everything back down again using the adapters that I made, and now it works. But I was hoping for better performance, but then again, everything is really small, and 95 watts of TDP need to be dealt with. So it's all right, but it's not great. The last changes that I did were, let's turn this back apart again. So I did paint the power supply, which is the right one now, in black. And as you can see, there's a lot of room still in here. It is really spacey inside. You can see that you could be running with a slightly higher heatsink. That would work too. But this one is fine. I was thinking about 3D printing a shroud under the power supply, so the power supply takes in the air further from the back in the case, drawing cooler air over the CPU cooler, and maybe that will get 1 or 2 degrees, but basically it's not worth it right now. And the other thing is the graphics card, which is the KFA2, is sealed in with plastic tape. There's a seal right around it, so all the air is drawn in from the front side, or the side here, and then expelled out the rest of the case, which really helps expelling some of the air that gets trapped when you're gaming, because the system just heats up a little bit more, and you just have an extra push of air going through the case. And the graphics card temperatures under load are really good. I never saw more than 77 degrees, which for the 1660 Ti is a pretty good temperature. And it's also really silent, so this thing almost never reaches maximum temperature and maximum RPM. So it's a really, really pleasant thing to sit by. The only thing that is slightly annoying is that the CPU cooler has sort of a ongoing whine when it changes the RPM speed, which is caused by the what is it called? The BIOS being really, really nervous about the CPU temperature. It is just all over the place, which I suppose is part of the fact that this thing is so small and it has to irradiate that much energy. But for a start, this is it. And this is the SilverStone Sugo with the USB 3 and the system inside. I'm really happy. It performs very well. It is sort of quiet. It's not silent. It couldn't be, because you have to push air through this thing because you're really, really turning a lot of energy into heat, and you need to get this out of there somehow. But this is very nice. You can take this along. It is sturdy, it works well, and it has everything you need. So that was my personal computer build video. And thank you very much for watching. See ya.